Hi there, I'm Sarah Jones and I am Director of Planning at Sky Media. My presentation for today is called Lights, Camera, Action, which is all about how TV triggers short-term response, which I'm going to bring to life through a set of 10 examples. So the narrative around TV has always been dominated by building long-term brand preference for big brands with big budgets. So long creative and production lead times, long booking deadlines, and long-term measurement all suggest that it's going to take a really long time to get any kind of payback. Even direct response TV traditionally suggests that you need a longish ad and lots of repetition to get TV to drive response. So if TV is all about long-term brand building, then digital channels fulfill the role of short-term activation, right? Well, actually, a lot of empirical evidence proves the contrary, and media effectiveness is not as binary as that. There's been lots of research studies over the last few years, including new response, new roles, the case for profitability and demand generation, which prove the strength of TV in the short term. And I'm just going to, they're all presentations in their own right, but I'm going to bounce through the evidence headlines. So firstly, this chart shows that TV delivers the most short-term sales. It creates the most short-term profit, miles ahead of other channels at the highest efficiency. TV also makes every other channel work harder. So if you're looking for a halo effect, then TV is the best channel to deliver against that. And most importantly, particularly now in an uncertain climate, presents the least risk. So if you're going to put money into a channel that you want a guarantee that it's going to perform well, then TV is the best channel to do that. And actually, more and more of the new TV brands we're seeing are digital native brands. Online businesses are the highest spending category in TV. And last year, Amazon was the biggest advertiser on TV. And there's two quite interesting things here. Firstly, they've got their own advertising ecosystem in digital, yet still see the need to use TV. And secondly, they operate in a relentless measurement environment. So, measuring second by second what their advertising and search is doing. So if anybody can see it working, then they definitely can. So why do we think that TV drives response better than any other channel? Well, firstly, TV has scale. It reaches people up and down the country from all walks of life, and it achieves that scale in a really short period of time. In less than a week, you can reach over 90% of the population with TV. Secondly, TV offers an unparalleled context. It's big screen, full screen, sound on, all of which we take for granted on TV. It would be ridiculous to watch a TV if it wasn't full screen. But actually, these things don't come as standard on any other channel. TV helps brands connect with people around the content they love and enables them to engage them through emotional storytelling. And that drives attention. We know that that makes messages more memorable, and that in turn leads to higher action. And then the cherry on the cake is that when people watch the big screen, their mobile is rarely far away. So the time between exposure and interest is absolutely collapsed down. There's also lots of focus in the industry now around trust. And I think one of the more implicit reasons that people respond so well to TV is that the process of getting onto TV, from developing creative to getting through TV governance, means that those brands must be legitimate. And in the words of Rory Sutherland, public promises carry more weight, hence why the words "as seen on TV" are more convincing than "as seen on Facebook." People respond to the trust that they have in the brands and in the content that they're watching, and that then again in turn drives action. So those are all the TV fundamentals, but it's worth mentioning at this stage that TV is also evolving. It's more accessible. At Sky we have over 10 news TV brands every single week. It's more accountable with household level targeting using a huge range of data sources. It's more agile, which we've seen more than ever in the last few weeks, with clients pivoting to new messages that have been developed in a matter of days. Plus, TV now isn't just reliant on longer term probabilistic modelling. We now have the ability to attribute interest or sales to TV in the short term in a deterministic way, which I'll talk a bit more about later. So now I'm going to give you my top 10 examples of how TV has or can trigger people to act, and why I think it should be a critical part of a high impact short-term campaign. So James Watt, one of BrewDog's founders, has been publicly one of TV advertising's biggest doubters, relying on their brand, community and their distribution to drive growth. Now, last year they worked with Craft, who are a creative strategy agency, and they convinced them to go onto TV with a strategy plan for notice, not for reach. And this rallying cry, it only takes one TV spot to make you famous. They selected spots based around social talkability, so programmes like Love Island and Game of Thrones were some of the standout shows, but they also saw that shows like 8 of 10 Cats and The Last Leg had continuous and engaged Twitter audiences that we could get a reaction out of with this 20-second ad. And they got a massive reaction. Every one of the spots drove a torrent of online love, but also abuse, which they welcomed. And in almost all circumstances, BrewDog was the only advert spoken about in the breaks they appeared in, let alone the show itself. Ultimately, they sold more beer. They had a staggering 20% increase in off-trade value sales, quadrupling their sales target. But actually, the game changer was that every time a spot went out and the conversation spiked, so did sales of BrewDog shares. They have shares in their business called Equity for Punks, and actually 10 minutes of advertising sold enough shares to pay for the whole campaign. Their analyst said that it should have taken £3 million in spend to get to that level of return, and they only spent 500 grand. So the second example that I've got is also around social, but this is more focused around YouTube. So for those of you who haven't come across the Lean Machines in your quest for at-home fitness, John and Leon are best friends, personal trainers, nutritionists, and YouTube sensations. They've got over 400,000 subscribers and had over 30 million views. They came into Sky Media a few months ago and they told us about when they featured on The Apprentice back in 2014. They were actually only on the screen for less than 2 minutes and not really in the foreground. The story wasn't particularly around them. They were mainly in the background in the shot. But when that happens, this is what happened next.
It's online right now.
Oh my freaking god. It just killed my battery videoing that.
I'm just Instagram.
So when John and Leon told us about that story and the huge volume of reaction they were getting from people seeing them on TV, kind of within seconds of them being on there, all of those came through, and actually it ended up breaking Leon's phone to the point that he had to go in and order a new phone. So TV not only drives short-term response, it also drives the need for a new phone. So the next example is around how TV inspires people to do things. You only need to check out the tennis courts in Wimbledon in June, or the amount of families playing football in their local parks when the Euros or World Cup is on, to see how much TV inspires people to get off their sofa and start or go back to a passion point. I was working with eBay a couple of years ago when Peaky Blinders came out, and we saw the sales of flat cap soar. The marketplace is a fantastic barometer for what's going on in popular culture. We put that to the test with a partnership with Channel 4, where we featured previous winners of bake-offs in an eBay branded ad, cooking that week's challenge with baking equipment that people could buy on eBay. And during the period of the campaign, baking sales increased by 10% year on year, and the actual featured KitchenAid mixer sold out overnight for the first time ever. Now, the next example, example 4, is one of my favourite graphs, if you can have a favourite graph. Dollar Shave Club had launched in the US with an online video and social first campaign. And then when Unilever launched the brand in the UK, they similarly wanted to set up a sort of more grassroots community focused campaign, but also balance that with the strength and the might that a brand like Unilever can put behind a brand. So they set up a pop-up barbershop or a Dollar Shave hub in Old Street Tube Station where customers could pop in for a free shave. And they worked with a select set of influencers to drive buzz. And then they went onto TV. And I think it's just a fantastic example of what happens when TV launches on search behaviour. So, you know, there's a direct correlation between the TV ratings coming through there and people searching on Google. So example number 5, we were lucky to have Abba Newbury from Habito on a panel at the Big TV Festival back in March. And she shared her story around getting Habito onto TV. What was really interesting was that when she joined the company, they'd already made a TV ad, but one about an algorithm which, with the best will in the world, would never have driven action. So what they did was developed a campaign around the insight that getting a mortgage can be hell. And now I'm just going to show you the difference between those two different ads.
This is an algorithm, efficiently sifting data, sorting 20,000 mortgages to find the right one. It's not doing it for you, though. Brains here doesn't give a damn about you. For you, there are humans, like Ash. Habito, where machines sort and humans talk.
Want to save money on your mortgage? It's either or Habito.
So that campaign from Habito tripled their volume, and despite TV being perceived as expensive, TV actually lowered their cost per acquisition by 75%. On the same panel, we talked to Cheryl Cavalier, who's now the CEO of Eve Sleep. She had a similar story to Abba, where a decent creative ad made a huge difference to response. But she did raise a note of caution, which I thought was worth sharing in this presentation. So when she arrived at Eve, they were measuring their TV purely on a performance basis, counting the number of mattress sales from each spot within seconds of that ad being on air. And the problem with that is that the buying behaviour for a mattress is far from impulsive. So most people don't see a TV ad and buy a mattress in the next 7 seconds. So they changed the TV strategy to focus on building the brand in big peak programming. They changed the ad to a more emotional spot around how a good night's sleep makes you feel. And that supercharged the level of searches that then would later translate into sales. Cheryl said that you could put an ad on TV on a Sunday night and they would just see the volume coming straight through to their website. And she didn't really need a model to demonstrate that TV was working. She could see it as it was happening. So from big contextual campaigns to focusing on the people who might have a higher propensity to buy your product. Now, while wastage we know can be good for lots of categories, there are some products which are just not relevant for the majority. You know, whether it's a ridiculously expensive car, an ad for pet food where less than half the population don't have a pet, or a product that's specifically for people who just need house. Targeting everyone can just be inefficient. We launched AdSmart at Sky around 5 years ago, and we've had over 2,000 brands on the platform, 20,000 campaigns, and we've had over 300,000 research interviews across 130 different studies. So what that means is we've learned a lot about how addressable TV works for lots of different types of advertisers, and in particular how it works at that bottom end of the funnel. It really, really does help to boost purchase metrics by an average of 20%. And the reason for that is because you're getting to the point where you're targeting category buyers, so buyers for whom your product might be relevant for. That greater relevance leads to less channel switching, it leads to higher attention, and that higher attention, as I mentioned earlier, drives more action. So here's a story from one of our clients with what happened when they used addressable TV.
Gasway are the largest heating company in East Anglia. They've been established since 1982. Any side of your home heating they can help you with, from gas boiler installations, services, repairs and cover plans. The new customers Gasway are looking for really is anyone who owns a home, anyone who wakes up in the morning and needs hot water or goes to bed needing heating. One thing we're looking for specifically is that those people are homeowners. AdSmart is perfect for that, as it can single out a much more sniped approach, and so that we only put our advert in front of those demographics. We'd always assumed that TV advertising was way out of our budget and really never investigated it. So Gasway decided to use AdSmart as part of its marketing strategy, really from the first conversations from Andy from AdSmart. And at that point we realised that it was actually something that we could afford to do. We had record sales for that month, and essentially that's what every marketeer wants to see. But the level, the increase in sales wasn't what anyone could be expected. We had over 35% growth. Every single metric that we can think of, every single KPI that we have were at record levels for that month. And as a result of that, we've gone from 1 month of AdSmart last financial year to having it 10 months of this financial year. AdSmart has a fantastic flexibility built in that means we can target specific postcodes. If one of the departments says we need more business in this area, as our engineers need more work, what we're able to do with AdSmart is say we need more coverage in this area, these postcodes, and that can happen. If you are a business like Gasway who initially believed that TV advertising is beyond your reach, get that myth dispelled straight away. It is affordable and it is targeted and it is probably the single most effective use of our marketing budget that we've had since the company began.
So on to a more DR focused example. Now the DR TV market continues to be popular for brands looking for broad audiences and low cost per thousands, particularly at the moment. We work with performance focused brands to take DR to the next level by using real-time web attribution to identify the best converting channels, programs and day parts. And what that means is we can actually optimize across the course of the campaign, you know, the kind of slow long-term TV perception that we talked about earlier is absolutely the opposite now, where we can optimize in real time. We've been working with Peloton since the end of last year, and we've improved their conversion metrics by 20%. They were already running DRTV, but actually by looking at optimizing in real time can really increase the capability of driving response in the short term. And I'm not sure about the rest of you. I, for one, actually have bought an exercise bike, not a Peloton, unfortunately, a cheaper bike than that, to compensate for my lack of spinning classes, and hopefully I will continuously improve at that. The next slide isn't a case study because we're just about to trial it, but there's now the technology combined with our data to move from probabilistic attribution to deterministic attribution. What that means is where previously you might be looking at the correlation as per Dollar Shave Club of TV ratings on search behaviour. This is actually the holy grail of closing the loop. So you'll be able to see who was exposed to the TV ad and then whether they then went on to look at and convert onto the website. So full funnel measurement, complete transparency, and looking at a direct match of TV exposure data onto the client's website. I've spent quite a lot of time talking about TV driving short-term response online. So what about offline? Well, this is a brilliant case study for Volvo, which was aimed to reignite interest in the Volvo XC60, which was starting to fall short of orders. So Volvo partnered with Mobster to use location-based audience data to build a segment of people in market for a car at a postcode level that they could target with addressable TV. So by identifying people who were going into other auto dealerships, they effectively built an audience of auto intenders that they went on to target on TV. They then retargeted those audiences with display ads within a drive time of dealerships and came up with a new methodology to compare footfall volumes. So they compared those volumes in the Volvo dealership and the competitor dealerships pre-campaign and then post-campaign. And what that meant was they could identify the offline uplifts that were driven by targeting those auto intenders via addressable TV. So an incredibly smart way of connecting the dots between offline and online to see how TV drives response. So that's the last of my top 10. I just wanted to leave you with the following ad. So St John's Ambulance haven't been on TV for a very long time, but obviously getting donations to support their work now is more important than it ever has been. So over the last couple of weeks, we worked with them and they turned this ad around and got it on air in a matter of days. It went on air last Friday, and within just a couple of hours of being on air, they'd already had 50 donations. So again, proving the relevance of making sure that you've got an ad that taps into a national psyche, but also is asking for a response that people are absolutely ready to give.
My name is Alex. I am a St John volunteer. I'm a first aider and an ambulance crew for St John. This week, in the last couple of weeks, I've been helping at the NHS Nightingale Hospital in London. Hundreds of other St John volunteers have been helping in their local emergency departments. Some of the ambulance crew are on ambulances in their communities, and there are others who are helping at Nightingale hospitals around the country. So St John volunteers are very proud to be able to support the NHS. They have skills that are useful and they're able to help in all sorts of different ways. But like everybody else, I've got vulnerable friends and elderly relatives. Everybody in St John has been putting every hour they possibly can in. As well as our ongoing work, St John Ambulance will be significantly increasing its provision of service over the next few months to fight coronavirus. We urgently need funds to put more first aiders and ambulance crew into your communities. Please donate now and help us save lives. Thank you.
So thank you for listening. That's the end of my presentations. If you've got any questions, I'm going to be available on Twitter. The locations there at Sky Media UK. I hope you've enjoyed listening, and thank you again.